They weren't real officers, but they wore confidence like a badge, and they kept coming back to his mailbox. It started with a knock, sharp and unnecessary, followed by voices that sounded official enough to make neighbors peek through their curtains. Two men stood by the road, clipboards in hand, warning him about HOA compliance issues. The mailbox, they said, violated community standards. It needed to be replaced immediately or fines would follow. The way they spoke felt rehearsed, practiced, and oddly aggressive. He checked their names later. They weren't listed anywhere. Still, the visits continued. Sometimes early. Sometimes late. Always the same tone, the same warnings. The same quiet threat of consequences that never came with paperwork. The mailbox became a target, dented once, loosened another time, always just enough damage to make a point. Neighbors whispered. Some suggested paying to make it stop. Others advised staying quiet. He chose neither. Instead, he watched. He documented. He noticed patterns. The fake authority, the lack of identification, the way they avoided cameras. This wasn't about rules. It was about intimidation dressed as enforcement. And whoever they were, they expected fear to do the work for them. One evening, standing beside the battered mailbox, he made a decision that surprised even him. He wouldn't confront them. He wouldn't report them yet. He would replace the mailbox, not with something compliant, not with something ordinary, with something they would never expect, and when they came back again, confident as ever, they would finally learn who had real control on that street. The replacement didn't happen overnight, and that was intentional. He wanted time, not speed. For days, the old mailbox stayed exactly where it was, scratched and uneven, as if nothing had changed. The fake officers returned twice during that week. Once they circled it, taking photos. Another time they laughed openly, reminding him that fines would soon arrive. He said nothing. Silence frustrated them more than arguments ever could. Behind the scenes, something very different was taking shape. He consulted local records, delivery guidelines, and property boundaries. He spoke to a retired postal worker who smiled knowingly and gave careful advice. Every detail mattered. Height. Distance. Visibility. Compliance. If this was going to end, it had to end cleanly. Neighbors began to notice activity in his garage. Heavy materials. Tools rarely used. Quiet work late into the evening. When asked, he simply said he was fixing a problem properly. That answer traveled faster than expected. The fake officers came again on a Saturday morning, confident as ever. One of them leaned against the mailbox, pushing it slightly, testing its weakness. It wobbled, just enough to satisfy him. They warned that the HOA would escalate soon and walked away without another word. That night, the old mailbox was removed. By sunrise, the space beside the road looked empty, unfinished, and waiting. Some neighbors felt uneasy seeing nothing there at all. Others felt curious. The fake officers drove by slowly but didn't stop. For the first time, they looked uncertain. Whatever was coming next, they could sense it wasn't normal. And when the new mailbox arrived, it would change the tone of the entire street. The installation drew attention before it was even finished. Metal met concrete with a finality no one could ignore. The new mailbox stood taller, heavier, and unmistakably solid. Anchored deep into reinforced ground, it wasn't decorative or flashy. It was quiet strength. Fully compliant, clearly marked, and impossible to move without effort in tools. Neighbors gathered at a distance, whispering as they realized this wasn't just a replacement. It was a statement. Delivery trucks stopped without hesitation. Mail slid in smoothly. Everything worked exactly as it should. And for the first time in weeks, the road felt calm again. The fake officers returned that afternoon. They walked toward the mailbox confidently. Until they were close enough to understand what they were looking at. One of them knocked on it lightly. The sound was dull, final. No wobble. No give. The smiles faded. Questions followed, less aggressive now, more cautious. Who approved this? Why wasn't it reported? He answered politely, offering nothing extra. Then one of them tried to lean on it. Nothing happened, no damage. No movement. Just a sharp realization settling across their faces. This wasn't something they could threaten into submission. Whatever authority they pretended to have stopped at that post, a neighbor filmed quietly from across the street. Another stepped outside and asked if everything was okay. The fake officers exchanged looks and stepped back. For the first time, they had an audience. They left without issuing a warning. That evening, messages spread through the neighborhood. People talked about fake enforcement, about intimidation, about how far control could go when no one pushed back, and standing beside the mailbox, he knew this wasn't over yet, but the balance had shifted. The pressure didn't return the way he expected. Instead of visits, there was silence. Days passed without a single warning or knock. The mailbox stood untouched, solid, and unquestioned. Neighbors relaxed. Some laughed about how quickly the fake officers had disappeared. Others wondered if something bigger was coming. He stayed patient. Silence, he knew, often meant retreat disguised as strategy. Then a notice appeared online from the HOA, vague and carefully worded. It warned residents about unauthorized individuals misrepresenting authority. No names. No admissions. But everyone understood the message. The HOA was distancing itself quietly, stepping away without drawing attention. A week later, a real postal inspector stopped by. Professional. Calm. Thorough. He examined the mailbox, checked measurements, nodded once, and smiled. "This one's done right," he said before leaving. That single sentence carried more weight than every threat that came before it. The fake officers never returned. What did return was confidence across the street. People installed cameras. Questions were asked sooner. Fear lost its grip. The mailbox became more than metal and concrete. It became a reminder that authority without proof is just noise. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he watched a neighbor's child tap the mailbox and laugh at the solid sound it made. Something about that moment felt final. The street was quieter now. Not because people were afraid, but because no one was pretending anymore, and what came next would make it clear to everyone who truly had the right to enforce anything at all. With the fake officers gone, the street slowly returned to routine, but something had clearly changed. People no longer ignored strange behavior. Cameras stayed on. Doors stayed open longer. Conversations happened where silence once lived. The mailbox stood quietly at the edge of the road, no longer a target, but a symbol most didn't need explained. The HOA never mentioned the incidents directly. Instead, newsletters arrived with softer language, encouraging residents to verify credentials and report concerns through official channels. It sounded responsible on the surface, but everyone knew why it existed. Authority had been embarrassed, and it was adjusting. Neighbors began sharing their own stories. A warning here. A threat there. Things they once brushed off now felt different. The pattern became clear only after someone finally stood firm. It wasn't that the rules were wrong. It was how easily fear had been used to enforce them. One afternoon, a delivery driver paused beside the mailbox and nodded in approval. "That thing's not going anywhere," he said casually. The comment carried a strange satisfaction. Strength didn't need explanation anymore. He realized then that the mailbox had done more than stop harassment. It had interrupted a habit. The habit of compliance without question. The habit of authority without proof. And habits, once broken, rarely return the same way. As the sun lowered and shadows stretched across the street, he felt no anger. Only clarity. The problem had been solved without shouting, without confrontation, without escalation, but the final confirmation was still coming, and it would arrive in a way no one expected. The confirmation arrived quietly, almost politely. Months later, a certified letter. Official. Real. It came not from the HOA, but from the city. The letter acknowledged reports of individuals falsely representing enforcement authority within the neighborhood. It thanked residents for documentation and stated that appropriate action had been taken. No names were listed. None were needed. Word spread quickly. People connected the dots without being told. The fake officers hadn't vanished by choice. They had been exposed. The difference mattered. The HOA followed up days later with a formal meeting announcement. This time, the tone was careful. Transparent. Rules about enforcement were clarified. Identification requirements were established. No one mentioned the mailbox, but everyone looked at it when the topic came up. He attended the meeting quietly, sitting near the back. No one challenged him. No one needed to. The presence of proof had already spoken for him. When the meeting ended, a few neighbors stopped to thank him. Not for the mailbox, but for showing what calm persistence could do. He accepted the words with a nod, uncomfortable with credit but understanding its value. Walking home, he passed the mailbox once more. Sunlight reflected off its surface, unchanged and steady. It hadn't fought anyone. It hadn't accused anyone, it had simply existed, correctly and confidently. Until the truth caught up, and sometimes, that's all it takes. Time moved on, but the lesson stayed rooted in that quiet street. The mailbox remained untouched, no longer a point of tension, but a part of everyday life. Children walked past it. Cars slowed beside it. No one questioned it anymore. The HOA settled into a new rhythm. Procedures were followed. Authority became visible instead of assumed. Residents felt lighter, not because rules disappeared, but because fear did. The neighborhood learned something valuable together. Control only works when people believe in it. And belief needs honesty. He never told the story loudly. He didn't need to. The outcome was visible to anyone paying attention. Fake power fades when faced with quiet preparation. Real authority survives transparency. Standing there one evening, watching mail slide cleanly into place, he smiled at how simple it all seemed now. A problem. A choice. A solution no one expected, not confrontation, not revenge, just resolve, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.